Yeah, so the ski school started in 2022 when we started doing the clinics, and just by everything's happened by accident all the way from the beginning until now. So to have what we have happening now is just insane. But just a recap: in 2022, I got invited, from another show skier to come to Jack Travers, and I skied at SeaWorld for years and never even knew about Jack Travers. And so I came for a visit. I was going to stay a day or two, and that turned into a meeting with Jack and Leilani and John and Chris and Natalia, and they loved what we were doing, and they had one lake available that they were using for overflow and for tournaments and things like that. And so we ended up, kind of shaking hands and saying, let's try to make this thing work and create a show ski school, a place for show skiers to go and be able to have the experience like the 3 event pros that come from all over the world. And this place is just, it's mind-boggling when you get here. We sleep 19 boys, 11 girls, 3 meals a day, pretty much a pickup and drop off from Sunday to Saturday from Orlando or Sanford Airport. And so we started to build in 22 and 23, continued clinics, everything started to grow. You and I got together right at the very beginning there, and kind of decided at some point you would join me down here. It was going to take a little bit of time for more people to find out about us, and then that was perfect timing when you got back from Australia. And that puts us 2 years in. This is our second winter, and we're looking forward to seeing this guy down here soon. Carl again. Hey, hey, our skills at skiing are a whole lot better than technology.
You know what? It's there's no pictures on the scorecard, George. You made it work.
That's right.
Okay, well,
That's right.
welcome, John.
Hey, guys.
All right, so start by telling everybody just kind of what you did, and just go tell them whatever you'd like.
Yeah, well, well, thanks, Faith. So I would say just to make, I'll make the intro short so I can focus on the fundraising. But about 3 years ago, really just coming out of COVID, our team was almost done. We lost our show site. We had no money. We had debt on our boats, and our members were abandoning ship. It wasn't a good time for the club, and I'm sure other clubs struggled as well. So 3 years ago, we got together and we decided to throw a big fundraiser, and we networked in our community, and we invited about 40 families, actually to my farm. And we did a cider tasting and a wine tasting, and we got them all together in the pole shed, and we basically said, look, this club's not going to make it unless the community supports us, and you guys are our community. So if it's not you, there's nobody else. And truth be told, these were some high net worth families that we had networked with. We all live in lake areas, and people with lake homes typically are. Well, they could afford it, but the question was, did they value it? And did they prioritize skiing in our team? And coming out of that meeting, we had a significant win, and we raised a lot of money, and they saved our team. And then 2 years ago, we did it again, and we had a similar result, a very successful result. That funding allowed us to, pay our debt off and buy new boats and motors and replace some old docks that were falling apart, and fix our jump that was also falling apart. And we really fixed our infrastructure. So then it got us thinking, okay, we fixed that stuff, but what we really need to do now is teach our skiers. And, unfortunately, during that COVID period of time, all of our older skiers, the ones that were the good jumpers and the good swivelers, most of them had left and moved on. And we didn't have, that sort of show ski culture where the older and more experienced skiers teach the younger skiers. We didn't have that anymore. So I was scratching my head, and, I'd heard about Faith's barefoot clinics and George's jump clinics. And we started with that. We used some of the funding that we raised, and we decided instead of making our skiers pay for these clinics, we were as a team going to pay and offer them free to our skiers, because in some cases our skiers, the families couldn't afford those kind of expenses themselves. So I don't want that to be a barrier. So in doing these clinics with George and Faith, got to know them a little bit, and I started to learn their goals and ambitions and what they were doing with the show ski school down in Florida. So I thought, well, gosh, this might be a thing for me and my son. So my son was a junior member of the team, and he was just starting to do freestyle jumping, really just up and overs, not much more. And he was also just learning how to barefoot. So we took a trip down to Florida. We booked 5 days at the show ski school. It was great, by the way. I mean, accommodations right there. The lakes are beautiful. The facilities are awesome. But the coaching was amazing. Really, the progress I saw my son make, and I even got in the water and did a little bit of barefooting myself, started to dust the cobwebs off a little bit. But it was a really amazing experience. And it got me thinking, in this sport, unlike other sports, there aren't a lot of training resources. There aren't a lot of coaches. If your child plays basketball or hockey, there's tons of programs and tons of clinics and teams and coaches, but show skiing, not as much. So I thought the show ski school had an interesting niche because I really, I know there's clinics out there and I know there's ski schools that you can go to. A lot of stuff is configured to 3-event, but there wasn't a lot configured to show skiing. So from that experience, I scheduled some clinics with George and Faith the following summer back up in Wapaka. And I got to know them a little bit better. George actually stayed at the farm, for about 6 or 7 days, maybe even longer, and was able to network out and also do clinics for, I think, the web footers and some of the other clubs that are in my vicinity, aqua skiers. So then we started talking more and more and more. And I thought, gosh, you know what? I never thought about fundraising for coaching or fundraising for teaching or education. So I started just doing some research, and we've gotten pretty good at fundraising. About half of our revenue comes in from sponsorships and our ad book, our team magazine, which I'll show you right here. So we do a team magazine every year. It's pretty nice. And we generate about half of our funding for the team now from that magazine. The rest of the funding we get mostly from private donation as a result of these fundraising events that we've created. But then I thought there's probably another leg to the stool with grants. So I looked at, the Wapaka Chamber of Commerce, the Wapaka Community Foundation. I branched out to the Fox Valley Community Foundation. And then I looked at other organizations and private foundations as well as the Rotary Club. So then I went to the Rotary Club website and I started to try to understand, well, what are the qualifications to get a grant? And it's a national organization. And if you start Googling around, you'll probably find a link to whatever your local city Rotary Club chapter is. They all have sort of their own pages. So I did that and I found the Wapaka Rotary Club. Then there was a little section where you could learn about grants and scholarships. Then I went into the grant section and they had a grant for education, and then they had a general grant. So then the general grant was up to $2,500. So I looked at the requirements for that, and one of the requirements was that it had to be a funding initiative that was consistent with their mission as an organization. So one of their missions as an organization was youth education. So I look at show ski school and I look at show skiing as physical education, really. So I filled out a grant form, and I'd be happy to send anybody on this call a copy of the questions and what I filled out to ultimately get the $2,500 grant. So with the grant, we were then able to work on a program with Faith and George that would be a total show ski training program. So it would be all encompassing, including some clinics for swivel and jump, as well as having them there to evaluate our practices and our acts, our boat patterns, everything about our show, and then give us feedback on how we can maybe optimize or improve our show, our acts, and our skiing. So it's a program, I think, that will help the skiers, it'll help the show director, it'll help the drivers and some of the other show volunteers put together a better ski show. So that in a nutshell is kind of where we started, and then how we got to show ski school, and how we decided to fund the total show ski experience program with Faith and George. And I think we're the pilot for that. So we're excited. I think we're going to have a judge from state also join us for this, and I'm also working to get one of the Division 1 drivers to also come on up and join as well. So my goal would be to have Faith and George, a judge, and also a really, really good and experienced driver, all kind of working together for 2 or 3 days to help our club become a better club. So that was a lot. So I will pause there and just to see if anybody has any comments or questions on kind of what I've presented so far.
Well, I tell you what's really exciting, and obviously, this is kind of morphed as we've worked together and done the things that we've done. And Faith and I were talking, and I'm like, after we went through those weekends and when we do our clinics, I do a maximum of 10 kids for the jump clinic, and she does a maximum of 5, right in that number. And when you budget it out, it's about the same spend as an entire 3 days being able to get the entire team. Now, instead of 5 or 10 kids, we're doing 30, 40, 50 kids, throughout the practices and throughout the weekends, and still doing a clinic, within that 3-day period. So yeah, it makes sense.
And like George and Faith have other skills, that maybe everybody isn't aware of. Faith was the show director of the aqua skiers, and she grew up in that organization. She knows a heck of a lot about the total show. And George, just because he happened to be living at the farm for a week, he kind of would, come on down to our dock and watch our practices. And I remember we were doing pre-built pyramids, and he was standing back there, and he was like, hey, you know what? You might want to tell your drivers this, or you might want to have the upper tier hold the rope a little bit differently, or have the lower guys lock their arms a little tighter. And I'm watching George here. I'm like, well, he's basically coaching us at this point, And then he looked at our boat patterns, and especially the way we drive our jump. And he says, man, you guys have a lot of waves coming on that jump. Here's some other ways you might want to think about driving that act. And George came from Wonder Lake, which is a preeminent team, and was one of the founding families. So I started to get to know Faith and get to know George and their capabilities. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity here. I mean, I've got like the jump coach extraordinaire. I've got a world-class barefooter, and I've got a show director and a great drive instructor, all, within these 2 people. So it just seemed like a no-brainer, honestly. And the cost was the biggest problem. As a show team, we're not used to just writing a check for $2,500 if it's not like for a boat or a dock, or something physical. So the thought of fundraising for coaching was a new concept for us. And as I started to research other ones as well, there is a lot of foundational money available for education of youth. So I would encourage anybody on the call, start with the Rotary for sure. But if you start looking around, you might even find other foundations in your community that support education, and you would qualify with the Show Ski School for that funding.
Yeah, it is. It's super exciting what you've dug into here, because that's just it. When you have the 2 different worlds of the 3-event world, and they're used to, that spend to do the things they do. And then we've got the show ski world, which, a lot of us show ski because we couldn't afford that world, so
yeah.
To actually have the funds. I mean, I'm straight up and honest at my clinics. I tell people if it was $100 for a jump clinic back when I was a kid, I wouldn't have been going to that clinic. That's why I did the first, that's why I did the first 3 years for, at no charge, and unfortunately I just couldn't keep that up. So here we are, everything's kind of morphed itself to the point where we are right now. And now to have a solution like this, to be able to, go in and in 3 days, be able to deliver what you couldn't get in 3 years is just, it's really cool to watch it evolve.
Yeah, I think finding a revenue source is a key next step for all of show skiing. We're a different kind of sport. We're not like the NFL, which has TV contracts and sponsorships of national corporations, we're much more nonprofit and grassroots oriented. So we have to be a little more savvy and gritty, I think, in how we find funding. And sponsorships and ad books are a great program. Doing fundraisers with people in your community is a great program. But now we got to look at this new bucket. Are there funding sources outside of the norms that we can tap into that can help support education and coaching? And for us, that's a big focus for our team, is trying to tap into more of those sources and keep this training coming. And my goal as team president is I don't want to have to charge my skiers, because I know, things are expensive and times are tough. A lot of families, they can't, it's enough to pay the dues, pay the USA water ski, pay for the equipment. It's a lot to ask of individuals. And if I can keep all training free, that's one of the aspirational goals of our team, and not ever have funding be a barrier for good, solid coaching and training.
Well, I mean, that's music to my ears. And like I said, for the first 3 years, never wanted to have to charge for that. So I mean, what an unbelievable solution. We look forward to we're grateful that you've dug into that, and I'm grateful that I was able to hang around. And really, a lot of this came just through us hanging out for a few days, and things evolved, and we got to chatting about it a little bit. And I mean, I can remember the day that I sent that flyer to you and said, and I sent it to Faith. I didn't tell her anything about it, and I just sent her the flyer and I said, "What do you think of this?" And just a HMMM. That interesting. Yeah, so we can't wait. I mean, I think it's going to be transformable.
The funding is important because, I mean, think of it this way, George, you're, arguably one of the best freestyle jump coaches worldwide. Faith, you're a world champion barefooter. So imagine if you guys were world champions or best of in a sport like ice hockey or volleyball or football. I mean, to have access to resources like you guys, it's an unbelievable advantage for our teams, because these other sports would never have access to people of your caliber within their sport.
And the next evolution, as this thing continues with everybody that's working so hard to push the sport to this new level, is the show ski school. My vision when I got here was clinics in the summer and school and camp in the winter. To have the opportunity to come down for a week with your buddies and your friends and get, the proper locale in glass water and, perfect conditions for 1 week of skiing is like a dream come true.
And then George, on my end, like we don't have the funding for this yet. This is we're working on it. My end, I want to create like a scholarship committee on my team and fund that and create a scholarship fund. So then at the end of the year, we can evaluate our skiers and we can say, you know what? We think these 4 people or these 5 skiers are ready for the next step. They're ready to become a great swiveler. They're ready to become a superstar jumper. We're going to pay for their tuition and we're going to send them to show ski school. And so we can get the right people down there who could really benefit from the training the most.
Well,
So that's something I hope to have in place maybe by 26 or 27.
Yeah, that's amazing, because it's really about, when we think about what happened in our sport for all those years of no coaching going on, and now we have all this good coaching happening all over the place, including, Faith and I in the show ski school and the clinics in the summer. But to train the trainers, that's what we've been working on, and duplication, so that when I'm done coaching, which probably isn't too long away, we're teaching the same things that have brought us to this level. And that's what's done it, is the clinics in the summer, camp, and guys coming to Florida in the winter, to all these different great coaches. But to have that scholarship for those kids to shoot for in the summer, can you imagine how much more into their summer they're going to be if they're shooting for a scholarship to go to a week of show ski camp?
Yeah, it's the motivation. Yep. And by the way, there are other people here involved. I should, whoever's listening, I know you guys have had the Fedorowicz family come down to show ski school. I know you're friends with Sarah and the boys. They're unbelievable skiers. They're from Wapaka. So just coincidentally, they were in Wapaka this summer, and we actually paid for them to come in twice a week and coach jumping and swill skiing. And that was just a lucky advantage that we had with them living locally. But they also had conversations with me around, gosh, there's not a lot of money for coaches yet in our sport. And this type of program where you're paying us to come in and teach your kids is really helping us a lot. So we felt really good about supporting the great skiers, like the Fedorowicz family. We felt really good about that too.
Well, I tell you, not only the Fedorowitzes, but there's a bunch of them that have been coming to the clinics for years, right? That we've been grooming to go and do clinics. So soon here, I'll be doing 4 or 5 clinics, but not 12 and 15. And hopefully at some point we have 30 clinics in a summer. And when that happens, we need to make sure that people are teaching what we've been teaching. So that continues to duplicate, and we create leaders that are getting these scholarships. They're coming down with the intention of being leaders on their teams, because when they come down, it's not just about the skiing either. It's about the personal growth and development and spending time around, just when they go to the lunches and dinners here, and it's kind of hard to explain. You've been there. You've sat at the dinner table at the Travers. I mean, it's transformational watching. In fact, the Fedorowicz is sitting at the table with the Japanese, and they're sharing their videos back and forth saying, no, you're crazy. And no, you're crazy, in the mutual respect. But the Fedorowitzes are examples of people that have just been so committed to their craft, to doing what they do, that they've chased the clinics. They've come down, they put in the time. Sarah skied when it's 45 degrees outside. So, they've done what it takes. But they're also working the principles of what has been being taught, and they're teaching the same things.
Yeah, and I can tell you, just having people like Faith and Sarah on the water around our teenagers, it makes a difference, because they can see what great looks like. And prior to that, we didn't have anybody really where we could point at and say, that's what great looks like. And so there's a leadership element, I think, to what you guys do there as well. There's girls on our team now that are like, hey, I want to be able to jump like Sarah, and before they couldn't say that.
Yeah. Oh, I can attest to it. I was there watching. I watched it happen with a few of your girls.
Yep.
That's incredible.
So anybody, I know there's some people listening here. Are there any questions out there, or does anybody want to take this conversation in any other directions?
There was just, Tara had said that she'd like a copy of the questions and your answers pertaining to the city grants and local organizations.
Yeah, if you could just shoot me an email address, I'd be happy to send that.
Yeah, so Tara, if you're still watching, email address, we can help share that out.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any questions regards to fundraising and stuff like that, or just about school in general or clinics in general?
You know what? Actually, want to really quick, John. Let's just kind of give everybody a bird's eye view or an overview of what we think the 3 days is going to look like. Like, how is the chain skiers going to structure? Because this is customizable. Because every team is in a different place, right? So we're going to customize our training to your needs. So for 3 days, basically, you have the opportunity to say, okay, on this day we're going to do this, and on this day we're going to do this, and on this day we're going to do this. And we would love to try to schedule that in a 3-day period that has a team practice and a show. And that can happen like 6 or 8 times throughout the summer with different clubs, right? So that we can evaluate all that. So give everybody an idea of what you're thinking for the chain skiers for those 3 days. What does it look like?
Well, we thought, so we tried to schedule, first of all, a weekend so we have half of our team are summer residents. So some of them aren't even showing up until end of June, because they're from all over the country. And the other half are from Wapaka and the surrounding communities. So the best timing for us was the last weekend in June for our team. And that also got us right before July 4th, which is our most popular show. And then a couple of weeks before the state tournament, which, we're really focused on improving our performance at state. So that last weekend of June is what we picked. And then the way our practice schedule works is Thursday nights are when we practice our big acts. So Thursday nights, 5 to 7 p.m. or 5 to 8 p.m., we practice our big acts. So show ski school would start on that Thursday. And George and Faith would come to our practice on Thursday night and essentially do an evaluation and engage with our show director and our coaches and drivers on our acts and give us some feedback on our acts, what we're doing right, what we might be able to improve. So that was kind of like the first evening was going to be this sort of big act consultation. Then in the morning, on Friday morning, since we have better water in the morning, we thought then we'd just switch to some skills training, and we'd start out with some clinics, and we would do our jump clinics and our swivel clinics. Those are two areas on our team that need a lot of help. Like currently, we only have one girl that can do an overhead in swivel. We have a lot of girls that do toe turns. So we're hoping to elevate all those girls to the next level on swivel. And then in jumping, we have a couple guys that are just extraordinary. But then we have about a group of 3 or 4 that are just kind of doing ride overs, maybe a little bit of heli, but really they need some work to try to get to the next level on jumping. So we selected swivel and jumping for skills trainings on Friday. Then Friday evening, we thought it might be a good time to get together around the dinner table with our show director and our coaches and have George and Faith just kind of give an overall impression of what they've seen so far from our team. Maybe some recommendations on how the practice is structured, or maybe something about boat patterns, or maybe something about the way that the technique that we're using on our pre-builds, whatever it may be. We're hoping they can come to us with some notes and some things that they've observed. Then on Saturday morning, we have an opportunity to do, if we didn't finish our clinic work on Friday morning, we would carry over and do some more clinic work on Saturday. And I would actually like to try to get some work done on doubles. I'm still working on making sure we got the right resources to do that. But strap doubles is a third area of our team where we really only have one good pair. And we need additional help for both the boys and the girls on strap doubles. Then Saturday night at 6 p.m. is our show. So this is finally, we actually do a show, and we have George and Faith there to watch the total performance end to end. And Saturday night, we break bread one more time and we talk about the show and maybe walk away with the top 5 or 6 things that we should do as a team to try to improve our show overall. And then we also are paying for a 4th day offsite to do barefooting on Sunday. When we don't have good barefooting at our site. So we're gonna take our boat over to Red Sand Beach and Lake Wazicha, and Faith is gonna do a barefoot clinic then on Sunday as well. So really, we're doing 4 days total training, with Show Ski School.
Yeah,
so that's
what a commitment.
That's the itinerary for now. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Tara said that they're looking at doing different raffles or something like a golf tournament. What's something that you would recommend?
It's like you got to look at your team members and find out what your resources are. On our team, like so I own a farm and I produce wine and hard cider. So that's an asset. I'm a member and that's an asset. So that made sense for our team because I could invite all these people over to the farm. We had another family that has a catering business, and they gave us a really good price on food. And then one of our donors sponsored the food for the free. So because of my farm, we had a free venue, and because of this donor, we had free food, and we had free drink with my wine, my cider. So that worked for our team, and everybody loved it because it was unique. So for your team, I guess look at your membership and what are your resources? Do you have a good connection at a golf course? Does somebody own a golf course? Um, does someone own a cool house, with a pool? There's all kinds of opportunities to do something interesting, but I would try to think outside the box and come up with an event or a theme that's unique, because that's what draws these people in. You know, if I would have held a banquet at a hotel ballroom, I don't think it would have drawn these people in, because they've done a million of those. So I guess just try to think creatively on what could your team put together that might be different or unique that these kind of people would want to attend. So I guess that would be my answer for that.
Yeah, last summer we had the opportunity, well, to watch these, fundraisers that you did, but also, I know Faith Skeet had a couple of them, but the boat, the dinner boat cruise,
Oh, that's
share that one, because a lot of these
yeah.
like have those types of things.
So that's a thank you, Jordan. I forgot that. So I did this. I did my farm fundraiser for 3 years in a row, and here's what I learned: is in year one, there's a lot of excitement. It's brand new. And year two, other people who didn't get a chance to go had heard about how awesome it was, and they wanted to go really bad. So year two worked out really great. By year three, everybody had kind of been there and done it, which was this year. And I felt like the enthusiasm was starting to flatline a little bit. And that told me, okay, 3 years, that's enough. Now I got to do something different, you know? So what we're doing this year is for those of you who have been to the Chain of Lakes in Wapaka, there's a really cool waterfront bar and grill called the Harbor Bar, or Clearwater Harbor. It's got two names. They have an authentic paddle wheeler. It's like 100 feet long. It's got a big red paddle wheel in the back, and I think it can hold up to 100 people. So for our fundraiser next year, we're doing the show ski cruise, and we're going to invite all these, sort of, I guess, just to be honest, high net worth families onto the boat. And then we did this year as well. We're going to do a show. We're going to bring that boat out to our show site. We're going to stop that boat, and then we're going to have our chain skiers do pyramids and ballet lines and jumping all around that boat. And that's going to be the theatrics. And last year, Faith actually participated in this, and she jumped off the second level of the boat, jumped off the boat into the water and did a barefoot run. We were a little late pulling her out of the water, but she got up and then she did circles around the boat. And then every time she did a lap around the boat, I asked if people would be willing to donate money for every lap that she made around the boat. So that's just another example of how you can get creative with whatever resources you have at your location. And we happen to have that paddle wheel boat at our location, and I thought, man, that would be a cool idea for a fundraiser. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
yeah. And we're doing that again this year. Last year I sold tickets. It was more like a general public cruise. But this year we're going to transition that it's not going to be a general public cruise. It's going to be an invite cruise with this donor base that we've created.
Very
Nice.
cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
George, you have to do some jumping for this.
Maybe.
Or bring George Jr. He can jump.
Oh yeah. There we go. There we go. Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, so think about that. For those of you that are on the call, like, what do you have at your location? What would be a lot of fun? And that's the big thing. If you're having fun planning it and organizing it, it's probably going to be a fun event.
And the other thing too, before we get to the end of the call, is everyone taking a look at their schedule right now.
Yep.
I know a lot of people, ski team meetings and stuff are going on, board meetings are going on, things like that, and weekends fill up really fast. It's going to be a limited amount that we're going to be able to, schedule in, and especially, starting in mid-May up until that July 4th, there's quite a few weekends in there that people can, take a look at it, and if it works for them, get in touch with us right away.
Yeah, and I don't know what your schedule looks like. But I find with our team, once the state tournament is over, things get a little more loosey-goosey, with the schedule. And end of July, even into August, you know, I think there's always flexibility to do stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we definitely will have the jump clinic for the web footers. We always do that the Thursday after state. We'll probably have the water walker somewhere in there like we did last year. This will be their third year as well. So there'll be a bunch of individual clinics up there at the same time, obviously. So we're gonna still be doing a lot of individual clinics as well. You know,
Yep.
jump and swivel, myself would jump, and a lot of privates too. When we're in a certain area, you know, if somebody wants a private lesson, we do those too. I don't think it's something we've really talked about very much. But you know, like you said, I was at your place for about 10 days because we had the web footers, then we had the aqua skiers, and we had you know, we had stayed in between, you know, so we ended up doing some clinics in there. So, you know, definitely get a hold of us as soon as possible. You know, all the information that John's given here, and just, it's going to be really cool to watch this evolve.
And you know, I'll offer this up to you guys. Like, since we're doing this, like it's kind of like the pilot program. If anybody wants to come to Wapaka and observe, you're not going to find a more fun place to visit for a weekend than Wapaka. Let me tell you, I can guarantee that.
Yeah.
You know, come on and observe. Come on down to our dock and watch the coaching, and come to our show. And you know, you can get a sense for what this experience is like. So if you want to book something like this for your team the following year, you'll have a better idea of what it's all about.
Well, you know, it's really cool, again, how it's evolving is when we made that announcement that we were going to do this, Alice Jensen, you know, jumped out on, you know, sent me a personal message and said, hey, this is really cool. If I'm available, I would love to come and participate. Would they like a judge's eye, you know, viewpoint?
Yeah.
And how cool is that, you know, to have that too?
Our show director just loved that when I told him. Because he's really into the scoring and he's very competitive, you know, and he loved the idea that a judge was going to be there. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, any other questions or anything else that you can think of?
Not that I could think of. If anyone else watching has any other questions, please put them in the comments real quick. But otherwise, I don't think I have anything.
Hey, babe, by the way, I'll probably be at WWSF at the think tank, and I might be speaking to some of this stuff there. So if anybody on the call is going to be at think tank and you want to talk in person, I'll likely be there as well. So
Yeah, awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey man, we can't thank you enough for, you know, for taking the time to be on here for one, and for sharing this information with all, you know, I mean, there's not a club out there that can't utilize this information, you know, and to put it to use in some way, shape, or form. So what a value to bring, you know, to all the Shosky teams.
Well, if you guys are successful, we're going to be successful. So we all are in this together.
Mm-hmm.
That is for sure.